Thank you, Mary, for all you've done to inspire a positive ripple effect of mental health in our community. We are so honored to highlight you today and commemorate all the impactful work you've done in your lifetime. Let's give another big round of virtual applause to Mary Ritchie. I'm Whitney Warren, and I have the honor of introducing today's keynote speaker. In choosing our annual speaker, the Women Helping Women Committee looks for several qualities. We take pride in always choosing a local woman. We seek candidates who will inspire and challenge us, who will share their vulnerabilities and boldly state their strengths. For the past 21 years, our speakers have made us laugh and cry, and have called us to be true to our own authentic selves. Let's take a moment to give a virtual standing ovation to all of our past speakers. You are forever in our hearts. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Jackie Servellon joins our long list of women dedicated to inspiring mental health awareness in Des Moines. Jackie stands before us today as a creative business owner, dedicated mother, active community member, loyal friend, and survivor of domestic abuse, coping with PTSD, and reoccurring trauma responses. It is tempting to focus in on the last few traits in the long list of what makes Jackie, Jackie. Domestic abuse, PTSD, trauma. They are hard words to hear. The sources of these words are hard stories to bear witness to. They're even harder stories to have lived through and worked to heal from. But today, Jackie stands before you as the definition of a survivor, a fierce advocate for her mental health and the mental health of others, an outspoken beacon of hope for those wrestling with their own traumatic histories, and an actively engaged community member, wholeheartedly investing in her own healing and paying that healing forward for others to learn and benefit from. Mental health is a powerful multiplier. Poor mental health seeps into families, triggering the reality of addiction and abuse we'll hear in Jackie's childhood story. The search and commitment to positive mental health creates hope and the confidence to live our lives differently, better, and in a way that heals more than just ourselves. Jackie is an example of the healing power of deep self-work and counseling. She is an example of persistence, of wholehearted living, and of trauma turned into tenacity. Today, it is our honor to listen to Jackie's story of survival, the steps she's taken to mend her life, and the positive ripple effect she creates by being a brave soul in a broken world. Join me in welcoming Jackie Servellon to the podium.
Thank you so much, Whitney Warren. And thank you all for making this virtual event for the Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center today. We have all worked very hard over the last several months to adapt to both the good and harder parts of this traumatic time in our lives. Learning to move forward within the boundaries and restrictions we are following, both concrete and assumed. Each of us has this wonderful, magical brain that adapts quickly as a basic function of its purpose. It does this in difficult times to keep us going when things get too hard, which may be an experience many of you have noticed in yourselves. This adaptation of the brain is what I will be talking about today, but specifically in regards to the brain in the face of domestic violence. I'm going to show a couple images, some very grainy, low-quality images on the screen here, to give you a face to a name, as I take you all through a tiny, tiny part of my experience with domestic violence. This is my sister Jennifer, whom I will be talking about in length today. She is radiant in more ways than I can begin to explain. And this is a photo of us as children in Chicago. Jen is on the left, I am center, and my other sister, Ginger, is on the right. We have a little brother, but he isn't shown. That sink in the background there makes an appearance as well. And this is a picture of us as kids with my mother, just to give you an idea of ages and faces. Now I'm going to share some of my stories, snapshots if you will, some of the memories, both good and bad, that have shaped me, and how therapy has helped me create good and be of service out of so much harm. Remember that first picture? My first snapshot is from April 14th of 2018. My sister Jennifer passed away from stage 4 uterine cancer at the very young age of just 39 years old. Just weeks before, I found myself saying goodbyes to my sister in her last month of life as we faced her mortality. After speaking with the oncologist, her outlook was pretty grim. Chemo to perhaps extend her life, but not save it, or palliative care and let it run its course. Jen, already a survivor of leukemia at 19 years old, and at this point severely malnourished, chose the latter. She also chose a death that would not add to the terrible suffering she had lived with for the last 38 years of her life at the hands of domestic violence, and the shame from the life she chose in life due to the intense trauma and undiagnosed mental health. I am not a mental health professional, but I do have over 30 years of experience as a survivor, along with an intimate knowledge on how domestic violence has brutalized the mental health of the people who I am closest to, my siblings, and myself. I have witnessed firsthand in my years of working with the most at-risk youth in the city of Des Moines. The one thing they all have in common, their one common denominator, is domestic violence. The question I'm going to address today is this: how does domestic violence really impact mental health? And sadly, the effect is like a painful wound that, if left alone, may last a lifetime. There is treatment, however, with love and support, combined with mental health counseling and services. Services that not all domestic violence victims have access to, and services that the Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center offers to so many in the community. All throughout our life, Jen was much more than a sister to us. See, we grew up in a home savaged by drug addiction and unspeakable violence against children. She took on the role of mother as soon as we came along. So for all purposes, she actually was our mom, because our own mother was a very lost, deeply hurt heroin and morphine addict that was completely unable to provide safety or nurturing to the 4 young children she had given birth to in the slums of Chicago, despite her affluent family roots. She would time and time again be unable to provide safety, not only from herself, but from the men she brought into the home as she sold her young, beautiful body for drug money to numb her own pain. Snapshot. Phone calls with my sister over the last weeks of her life. She often spent this time recalling memories of how she tried but was unable to keep us, her children, safe. How she would find our mother passed out on the kitchen floor by that sink you saw, with a needle still in her arm, crying, trying to help her get up as a little kid. She would try to take care of us the best she knew how, but she was simply too small to do it on her own. Her grief at dying was nothing compared to unresolved trauma from domestic violence. A snapshot. One morning, a few weeks After we found out her diagnosis, I was standing by my window on a phone call with Jen. I listened intently as she told me how a certain song still made her skin crawl, and the smell of a barbecue grill made her remember the monster that our father was, feeling it in her body like it was yesterday. She cried and apologized for not knowing how to keep us safe. As a 5 or 6-year-old child, scratching and clawing at a door, we would one by one disappear behind until someone would pull her away. I knew what they were doing to you all in there, she said. As like many times over the years I noticed, but unsure why, her voice would change during these conversations. It would become very childlike until she came back from the memory. This is very sad. I could feel the sadness. I could feel the ache in her words, realizing later in therapy, her diagnosis, along with my own, because you see, we were both victims and survivors of chronic, shared abuse and violence. Over the last few weeks of my sister's life, we did not celebrate a life well lived, and we did not cherish good memories like most families or many. Rather, we cried together as years of abuse haunted our completely broken relationship. We grieved the years living with a stepfather, a man that routinely beat our mother within inches of her life, recounting the many times we were woke in the middle of the night, with my mother's whisper quickly being ushered into unmarked vehicles that took us to safe houses where we would hide out with our mother in an attempt to keep all of us safe. Eventually, though, after being moved from one safe house to another, we would always be asked to leave because the staff at these homes simply could not risk the safety of the other families there, as our abuser relentlessly engaged an army of men that stalked, intimidated, and threatened staff as he hunted us down. We were his property, and he was willing to take anyone down that got in his way. During our times at these homes, it was often the only time I really saw how battered my mother really was. You see, she was also a victim herself. During the last days of my sister's life, we grieved a life that was unreasonably hard. We grieved at the pain we saw in each other, keenly aware that it simply should not be ending like this. A life that had been taken away years ago, not by cancer, but by the hands of abusers. Domestic violence changed us in ways outside of our control, ways that we did not yet understand, and honestly, too afraid to ask anyone about for fear they might tell us what we had suspected all along. We were too broken to be fixed. During the last days of my sister's life, like many of the days before, domestic violence stood like a wall between us as we silently acknowledged we were doing the best we knew how, which wasn't enough, but we were unsure of where to turn for help. After all, our world, had not been kind to us. During all this, time did not stop, and I worked so hard to cope with the grief in the only way that had not backfired on me in the past: work. So from an outsider's perspective, everything was going great for me professionally. I was speaking publicly on my experiences as a youth offender. I took on leadership positions in community groups, changing the conversation around criminal backgrounds and ACEs, creating trauma-informed training programs for youth offenders, teaching resilience skills which would earn praise from leadership. I was the picture of resilient, a coveted title community members and employers largely celebrate when discussing adversity. I was the ideal employee, always taking on more than was expected and delivering on it. Positive and energetic, bold and innovative. Until I wasn't. Slowly, things started to unravel for me, and I found myself at the mercy of the years of abuse I had packed away for so long as it came spilling out of the rock-hard exterior I had spent most of my life perfecting. A few months after my sister passed away, I was in a work meeting, unable to hear the criticism of my work any further. After trying to push the tears down over and over again, I witnessed my body move from my seat and leave the room, sobbing, completely unaware that these criticisms had dug into an already open wound that triggered the same feelings I felt as a young girl while being abused and shamed, as if it were happening in real time. There was no distinction. Later, I learned in therapy this was a normal symptom of CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which can often be misinterpreted without proper education on trauma-informed practices and an understanding of mental health. Many mornings I would sit in my car before going to work, wiping tears from my eyes, willing myself to walk in those doors, saying to myself, "Make today better than yesterday, Jackie. Be positive and be happy around everyone. And for goodness sakes, don't cry in front of anyone else." Because I had already been talked to by senior leadership and told that in order to help my coworkers better connect with me, I needed to explain my trauma because they had become uncomfortable as I withdrew more and more from the usual vibrance I brought with me. In the height of all this, I became the center of office gossip and had completely run out of energy to placate the discussion around my mental health because even I wasn't sure what was happening. I had no idea. After months of trying to keep all the pieces together, I found myself sitting at a conference room table with my employer, a resignation letter in my hand, and tears in my eyes, explaining I simply could not do it anymore. Against the direction from senior leadership, my direct supervisor, now friend and mentor, took the most powerful stance of support I could have received at the time. She acknowledged the grief. She recognized how hard I had been trying, and instead of judging me for what I perceived as a major failure, she simply showed me there were options available for me. She took the time to advocate for my needs when I was unable to do it for myself, so that way I could take the time to process through my grief with the help of a therapist and heal the only person in the world I can possibly heal, which is myself. The passing of my sister unearthed deeply buried trauma that I had packed away very effectively with my brain's superpower, dissociation. This is a coping mechanism that has allowed me to shut myself off from these experiences that were too traumatic and too painful to stay present in. This has allowed me to forget entire years of my childhood amnesia until something in there came roaring out of me with these conversations with my sister, demanding my attention with flashbacks and PTSD. I couldn't just put it away and move on like I had for most of my life. My body was asking for help. Present day. Now, while I chose not to return to that position, I have spent the last year deep in EMDR therapy, unearthing and understanding the root of my trauma with the support of family and friends. I have chose to dedicate my time to healing myself in ways that allow me to process through it with balloons and working with my hands. As a sensory processor, I have used what most people saw as a balloon business, combined with a marketing background, granted, as a creative outlet to work through grief with art. Working with my hands allows me to access different parts of my mind. It allows me to process through a deep pain of trauma created by creating beautiful objects. I have found this to be a pathway for connecting with myself through tactile skills and tuning out the noise of the world, because as a survivor, it's often too loud. Creating and working with my hands is a way of practicing meditation and mindfulness. This form of care has also facilitated true, gentle connection with other women in the community that have listened to my story as I slowly unfold the truth behind a life carved by domestic violence, mental health, art, and healing. These women, one being Whitney Warren, who presented today, a friend, advocate, community builder, she, among others, have showed me what it looks like to support and lift up women. Now, I don't want to send the message that I am somehow magically healed or that therapy is the answer to never feeling the pain from domestic violence. I asked my therapist a couple weeks ago when it would stop, and she said, "You can't undo violence. You can't undo memories of violence. And you certainly can't undo the sadness that comes along with it either." I'm learning that therapy isn't a tool to fix the broken, because we are not broken. Mental illness is born out of the strength from surviving more than a person should have ever been forced to handle. So as I finish up today, I want to ask that we, all of us, we change our perception of mental health therapy as a solution to a problem. Mental illness is not a problem. Rather, it is a gift from the brain that makes rapid adaptations to keep us safe, much like we've been practicing over the past 6 weeks. As a community, our support comes in the gift of providing mental health access to survivors so that they can finally readapt their brain to a safe present and live a life full of hope and healing. This luncheon, the Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center's Women Helping Women event, raises funds, unrestricted funds, and if you work at a nonprofit, you know how important that funding stream is. These funds are used to facilitate healing with programs such as EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a psychotherapy treatment designed to alleviate the distress associated with traumatic memories, which has been the backbone to my own mental health counseling. They also provide programs called COOL, Children Overcoming Obstacles in Life, which uses an experiential approach to counseling, integrating play, art, food, music, outdoors, and movement for children. All of these pieces of my own healing pie that I use as an adult through creating art and expression with balloon installations, writing, baking, and now cooking alongside a community of supportive women. Today, I am certain that we can raise enough funds to provide access for these families and survivors that do not have the financial support or resources so they can live a life that isn't shattered by trauma response from abuse. Together, we can open these doors as a community of women helping women, so the center can continue to fulfill their mission of walking with people through the journey of counseling and education to find hope and healing and to live a fulfilling life. Therapy has given me the insight and courage to follow creative pathways, some of which you'll see pop up in images after this speech. This allows me to stimulate my healing because my needs as a survivor are different than the needs of someone that hasn't had these experiences. And I know that through the center, it can be the driving force for so many others to create beauty in a way that works for them. Thank you.